Okay, so the class is being recorded like always. And my name is Dr. Sameh, and this is A230B. So what is it that we're doing tonight? We're doing the sign of 4. We have done a bit of the sign of 4, but we're doing more today, inshallah, and we're finishing it off so that we can start something else tomorrow and the day after.
I'm sorry, doctor.
Yes, go ahead.
When did you start the course?
When did what?
When did we start?
We're starting now, just now.
No, you said we have taken a brief section of it. This chapter.
I'm not sure I can hear you.
You said
Are you talking about the sign of 4?
Yes, you said we have taken a short.
Yeah, part of
When?
it. Yeah, remember?
When did we?
This was before the was before the break. We scheduled, was it an extra class, Alia and everybody? Those who attended the sign of 4 with us?
Yeah, it was an extra class.
Was it Wednesday?
Yeah.
Or what? Okay. Now we're going over everything anyway, and it's we'll talk more about it. You didn't miss much, Wissam, if you're asking about that. Okay, so how do we know, or how much do we know about the sign of 4? Anyone? Those who attended, those who have read, um, anything? Sign of 4, everyone? Does it ring any bells? Is it
Doctor,
also
I
Doctor-
watched the movie. The movie.
Mhm.
It's about one girl. She lost her father, and there is a question mark about how he died in India or in
In
and
England or in London?
yes,
Yes.
yes, yes. And she asked for help for one in the I think like police for helping her for to know how he died. And there is a people for 4 person, 2 or 3 Indian and 1 British. They make this thing find monies, and that's what I
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah, ممتاز يا فوزية. Thank you so much.
Doctor, it is a detective novel. The home is Britain and the abroad is India. The events happened in India.
Yes. Yeah, very good. Yeah, hint. Yeah, thank you, hint.
Yes.
Yes. So it's a detective novel, whatever that means. We spoke about detective novels and what they represent and what features and characteristics they have. We're likely to talk about it again today. What else? We said that we again still talking about it against the idea of home and abroad. And by now, you know what home means in the British popular imagination and what abroad means, right? So abroad means whatever is foreign, whatever is unfamiliar, whatever is unsafe and violent and mysterious.
Outside.
Yes, and
Outside.
outside. Yes, absolutely. And whatever home would, give or give you the impression of whatever is safe, secure, closeness, Victorian values of
Family.
stability, respectability, right? So we apply that to the novel, like we did with the other novel, Wuthering Heights. Okay. Basically, a detective novel where you normally have a crime. This crime can be murder and it can be theft, and sometimes it can be both, like we agreed. And you have a detective, somebody who is meant to investigate the crime away from the police, because the police at the time were not, they didn't have those categories where you have department for investigation and another for something else. So the people would hire private detectives like Sherlock Holmes. Again, we'll talk perhaps more about the tools and the methods that the detective uses. And we also talk about the case and what happens in it. And then over time, you would feel as a reader that you're part of the investigation. You want to know, you want to investigate. And eventually, through the details that you have, whether those details are relevant or irrelevant, you come to the conclusion that this or that guy is the culprit, or is the one who did it. You normally have one conclusion, not so many conclusions and not so many scenarios as what and how things happened. This is uh, briefly what a detective novel is. Again, we shouldn't be losing sight of the fact that we're working under the parameters of home and abroad. Okay, so home, like Fawzia said, would be England, would be London, and abroad would mean India, because the events and the killing and the murder happened in India, and then people came all the way to England. So the idea that there was murder and killing in India would automatically refer us to the idea of abroad. And then the resolution and the determination as who the culprit was done in England, indicating and suggesting to people who were worried about the level of violence, the higher level of violence, that somehow there is, oh yeah, there is crime like anybody else, but crime is under control. This is the message that writers like Doyle uh, are trying to give people. They are trying to say, yeah, if there is crime, there are ways as how we can curb and control this kind of crime. So this seems to be the message. Okay, let's move to the slides and see what we have. Yeah. Okay, so it's like I said, it's Arthur Conan Doyle. This is the author, and the novel is The Sign of War. So these are the in a very brief way. This is what the novel is about. So the novel starts with Holmes, who is the detective, and he is obviously uh, um, spending his pastime, is spending time, um, with his assistant, Dr. Watson, assistant and friend, and they are obviously talking about stuff, and we get to know that Holmes injects himself with cocaine. Um, Again, after a while, Mary Marston, a single young woman, will come over to Holmes asking for his advice. Her father has been missing for some time, and she wants him to help her find him. She, of course, talks about the fact that her father disappeared under mysterious circumstances and conditions, and this was like 10 years ago. And the fact that she started to receive a large pearl in the mail at annual increments, which means every number of months she receives a pearl. Um, So who sends? She doesn't know. She also doesn't know where her father is. She starts to explain the letters that she received and the instructions that she is given uh, uh, by whoever sends the letter. Again, the letter indicates, among other things, that she was treated unfairly. Of course, indicating, among other things, that her father may uh, have been killed. So what happens? Holmes, the detective, and his assistant, Dr. Watson, are going to go with her to where the directions are headed with them or given to them. Um, this is on the sidelines. We're going to see that Watson is interested in Mary, and they are obviously developing some kind of liking for each other. They go, um, and there they find an eccentric gentleman. Eccentric means strange, by the name of Theodus Sholto, and he reveals to them the fact that Mary's father died, uh, um, and in one way or another, Mary is an heir to a great hidden treasure. She should inherit a great hidden treasure. So from where this treasure comes, this is obviously what the whole thing is about. So he goes on and explains that her father too was part of perhaps a crime that has other people involved, and those people, some of them or one of them is with the wooden legs. Um, it's something fishy that he is perhaps revealing to the girl and to the detective. Somehow, Sholto, the father, is going to explain to his sons before he dies that there is a treasure. Again, when he was about to reveal everything, he was kind of um, suffered from a heart attack and died. And then the next day, they found that his body had this note to it, and it's called the sign of war. Theodus starts to explain more about what happened, the treasure, the fact that he also has a brother by the name of Bartholomew, um, and he gives details about this. Again, what the father did before he died, he made sure, or he made them perhaps swear, that they are going to share part of the treasure with Mary Marston. Again, things develop, and we get to know how things happen, and then they go all the way back to the source of the treasure, the fact that it was in India, and the fact that they have stolen it from somebody. Um, Again, over time, things gets complicated until we get to, Holmes discovers who those four people and what they did in India, and things take a nasty turn, and we get to know all about the story. Um, so when you look at the story, like I said, so we're not very much interested or keen on the story because it's just another detective story, like all the other stories that you may uh, read as a detective. We're interested on the impact and the influence of the ideas of the time on the story. Again, the focus would be on telling us that whatever is foreign, whatever is Indian in this case, is negative and bad, and whatever is English, whatever is related to London is obviously good. Again, most of the bad happenings happened in India, and it's the backdrop or the background would be the English mutiny. I'm sorry, the Indian mutiny of the 1850. I spoke to you about it. Um, this is all a synopsis of what happened. Like I said, the plot in itself is not very important. What is important would be the ideas that the novel promotes about um, home and stability and security and abroad with its violence and everything. And the story comes to an end when Small, one of those conspirators, explains that he was approached by three Arab guards and offered a share in a great fortune if he would help them murder the man who carried it, and which he did, obviously. Um, so this is the synopsis. Let's move to, again, the idea of home. When we talk about home in the Victorian age, we're talking about London life. Remember, when we talk about home, we talk about safety, morally righteous atmospheres where if you keep to the values of the time, you're doing a good job. And those values were, for the most part, family and social values. So how much do we still know about detective novel? We know that The Sign of Four is also a domestic novel. And what do I mean by domestic? I mean that it happens within the sphere of the family. We're talking about basically a family story. We have a lady whose father went missing. Again, it's domestic because it happens, most of the events happen in London, except for, or the interiors of London. We're moving from one house to another in London. And there is, of course, a reference to India in the background. So we're moving from one house to another. We're moving from Theodore Schultz's house in Brixton, which is in London or in England, to Mrs. Forster's in Camberwell, another place in England, and then Bartholomew Shelter Lodge. So all of these places are in London, especially the residents of Holmes and Dr. Watson, where they live. They live in 221B Baker Street, and this is where the story starts and ends. Remember when we spoke about a typical London house or home where, as you can see, there is a place for books because people were literate and they wanted to spend their time. And obviously, they don't have internet or YouTube or Twitter. That's why it's books that they are using. As you can see, it's yeah. During its time, it was a lovely thing, but of course, it's now old. But you can almost tell that this is a middle class setting where you're not talking about poor people here. So what do we know if this is a reworking of where Holmes used to operate and work, the detective? You can almost tell that he is an avid reader, somebody who reads a lot, and that he is also the author of many books. Um, and we have examples in the novel where whenever he talks about books, and he looks up in books in order to know more. If he wants to research for a crime, he does some reading, and he has this huge study room that we have seen. Um, again, when you go there, you can see also it's not very clear, but look at, for example, the table. The table does not look like an English table. It's more of an Oriental one. It can be taken from the colonies in India, for example, where you have those ornaments and decorations and everything. So this would give you the idea that home is sometimes invaded by abroad. You may have abroad elements from abroad in home. So the idea of kind of separating them all together sometimes doesn't happen. You cannot do it. So there is an Oriental table, like I said, a table that does not belong to English traditions. It's more Oriental, Sharia, where you have a coffee pot and cups. Coffee and tea are obviously not things that are planted, or they don't grow in England. They are taken from the colonies, whether in the Americas or in India. Um, So again, this is a description of what happens within the home with all its different features, which even have an indication or a reference to, perhaps music. And again, the atmosphere at home is one of relaxation, with one of security. And of course, this is going to end soon, where there is going to be talk about violence. Again, this violence is normally associated with people from outside England. Okay. So again, when we talk about the details that we see in the novel, and some of those details are not very relevant, not very necessary. Um, when we talk about the small details that we have in a house, for example, it is true that they may not be very relevant, but you need them in order to flesh out the character of one, in order to know more about him, what he likes, what he doesn't, what he keeps at his home. And so those things also give an air of realism and believability. You think that you are in front of a believable, realistic character, not a fictional character. Again, this is the two friends, Holmes and his friend and assistant, Dr. Watson. Again, this is also an illustration of, Mrs. Marston and Holmes, and obviously is asking her questions, and she is assigning him to go and discover, find out what happened to her missing father. What do we have here? We have Holmes, and he is, as a detective, he does a number of experiments, lab experiments, in order to prove something. So again, this is very scientific, and this is typical of um, detectives and investigators. So again, we're talking about Holmes and his love for chemical experiments. Again, he does that while on an assignment, and also when he is away from assignment, so that he can keep himself and his intellect busy. Again, we're stressing the fact that whatever we see in the picture of this house, the red one that we have seen, gives you an air of realism. You feel that what you're seeing is real and not imaginary. So if you would compare the sign of 4 to Wuthering Heights, you're going to see how gothic, wild, and uncanny Wuthering Heights is, and especially when we talk about the house. Again, 221B Baker Street gives you a different atmosphere, an atmosphere that is full of comfort and coziness, and this is known for Victorian houses. So, as you can see, the novel and its main home, which is 221B Baker Street, they both serve as a marker of domestic security. You feel that people are safe and secure, but the world around them, where crime is rife, is unpredictable and sometimes even frightening. So, as you can see, you have ideals of security and stability and everything, which comes with the perfect home, but this would clash with the violent realities of life outside. Okay, so how much do we know about the writer himself, Doyle? We know that he was born in Edinburgh in 1859, and his family were Irish, and that during his childhood, his family had to go through difficult times financially, but he could secure excellent education all the same through the help of one of his uncles. Um, so he was a doctor by profession, a physician, and being a physician allowed him the opportunity to see all types of people. That would be good material for the novels that he writes. So if you're a physician, if you're a doctor, and you have your private practice, for example, or you work in a hospital, you meet all types of people, people who are rich and people who are poor, and in this way you have experience, enough experience, and you know how to deal with things. This is the experience that helped Doyle write his novels. So from those encounters with both poor and rich people, he recognized that prosperity and respectability can live side by side with poverty and crime. So you can see from the outside, you can see a happy Victorian house or home, but you don't know what happens inside the house. So you may see a family, and from the outside, you feel that they are happy and everything. But deep down and within the house, there are sad stories. You can be talking about an alcoholic father, an abusive father, and all those kinds of things. Um, so again, the focus in the sign of 4 is on the idea of home and how home is threatened by the outside world. So as you can see, domestic space, which means London and the houses of London, domestic space repeatedly doubles as a crime scene. So for all what we said about security and stability and everything, you still have bad things and violent things happening at home. What are those negative sides that we don't normally have with the concept of home, but we still have them all the same? In the novel, you have the idea, for example, the negative idea that Holmes is a drug addict, and the fact that he injects himself 3 times a day. And this is obviously very shocking for the people of the Victorian age who believes in the idea that you have to be self-disciplined and you have to show restraint when it comes to what to eat and what to drink and what to smoke. What else did we talk about? We also talked about the idea of detective fiction in general and how it started. Um, Before we talk about when it started, we talk about its features and characteristics, and we said we're talking about a single criminal case, and that can be a murder or theft, and it can be both. And how do we get to know who the culprit or the one who committed the crime is? It's through the concerted efforts of the detective. Um, So what is interesting about detective novels is it encourages us as readers to engage with the text, and we try to find to put the clues together and come up with our conclusions as who the culprit is, the one who commits the crime. Um, Detective novels, in terms of history, would go all the way back to 1841 with the publication of The Murders in the Rue Morgue. This was written by Edgar Allan Poe, and Edgar Allan Poe is an American Gothic short story writer. So this was the first attempts at detective novels, and then the word detective started to be used in journals. And then Charles Dickens gave it more currency when he used it in his work. Again, you would ask why detective fiction and novels were popular, because people wanted to read. So they read novels of all types, they read correspondence, they read letters. They also read um, detective novels. Again, when you talk about detective novels, you talk about the ability of the detective to collect information about the crime, and those pieces of information are sometimes relevant and irrelevant. So, what happens is that the detective eliminates scenarios that are not plausible, that are not possible, that are illogical, and focuses on whatever is relevant. Again, we stress the fact that with detective novels, you normally have one conclusion, one kind of solution to the problem, not so many. Again, when we talk about the sign of four, especially, we talk about Sherlock Holmes, the main character, and also the detective. And we get to know, for example, that he uses science, and he uses what he calls the science of deduction. Deduction means that you have pieces of evidence, you collect them, and then you study those pieces of evidence and you come up with a conclusion. You say, this is it because of this and that. And this is actually what happens. When you have eliminated the impossible, you remove and get rid of whatever is not plausible, whatever is impossible, and what remains is whatever is truthful and whatever is near or close to truth. So it's deduction that Holmes is using. And it's deduction that we ourselves as a reader are engaged in, trying to solve the mystery. Another feature about detective novels would be the idea that they have significant, important details, and they also have insignificant, unimportant detail. Why do I need insignificant detail? Because they flesh out the scene, they fill it, they give you information about the places and the persons, and that would, of course, help you um, believe in what happens, believe that this is relatable and this is realistic. Of course, that the relevant details are very important. Um, So the detective novels are a genre in and of themselves. It's some kind of reading material that lots of people are hooked on and interested in. Um, Again, this is part of what we're talking about Mary Marston, the one who assigned Sherlock Holmes to start the investigation. What she does and what her role is in the novel is she offers us the bare skeleton of the relevant information about the case. And then Sherlock Holmes starts to collect and connect the dots. She talks about her dad's return from India. She talks about her life and his career. She gives rough dates, and she also provides details about the connection of her father to Major Sholto. So again, Holmes would ask empirical questions, in questions that are not theoretical, questions that would need physical evidence. Okay, so the questions that he asks, like we said, are very empirical and they are not theoretical. Uh, uh, those questions would need concrete answers about who Major Sholto is and when he returned back to England, what happened to Marston and all those kinds of things. So attention to detail is very important in the novel. This is about when The Sign of Four was published. It was published in 1890. And then when I talk about 1890, I'm talking about the Victorian age. During the time, there was this idea of realism. Novels uh, um, have to be realistic. Detective novels were driven by the resolution of the plot. The focus was uh, on the plot rather than on the development of characters. So characters were not as important, like we have seen, for example, in Wuthering Heights. So what else do we know about those kinds of novels? We know that their structure is repetitive and predictable. You can almost tell if you grab a detective novel, you can expect what will happen. I mean, the structure is almost the same. Even the development of the plot and the ideas. So again, repetitive. Again, it's predictable, and you have a definitive resolution at the end. Again, uh, why this kind of novel was widespread at the time? It's again because people were interested in reading and they would read just anything. They wanted to cater for their appetites for um, for reading. Again, you wouldn't also ignore the fact that they were rich or middle class. They have money. They can afford to buy books and read them and everything. Again, this is about the publication of the thing and how it was published. It was published, in installments. You have an episode, and then the next week you have another, until it was kind of put together in a book. Again, the idea that it was published in episodes was meant to kind of excite readers so that they can wait for the upcoming issue. Again, we have all types of reading practices in the novel. Um, you have advertisements, you have the books that Sherlock Holmes reads, you have notices uh, and again, advertisements. Somebody is writing in the newspaper asking about somebody else. So those are different types of readings in the novel. Uh, even Holmes, when he wants to make sure that something happens, he can also use the newspaper, I mean the press, in order um, to get information and see the reaction of things. So how long or how big in terms of time? The novel takes only 96 hours, and all the major characters in the story, as we can see, they read newspapers regularly, and this is obviously a reference to the Victorian age and Victorian people's habits of reading. And then we move to the idea of abroad. And of course, let me check. Do you guys have any questions? Because I've been talking for so long. If you have any questions, come to the mic.
Clear, doctor.
Yeah.
Okay, clear. It's easy, by the way. I mean, the Sign of Four is way easier than the other novel, Wuthering Heights.
We need to
Yeah.
know the names for each person, or not
When
necessarily.
yeah, come
We should
again. What did you
we
say?
should we should know the names of each persons,
No,
or
that's
not
fine. No,
necessarily.
no. We're normally asking you about concepts and ideas rather than about people and characters.
Okay, thank you.
Mm. So let's move on. So let's move to the idea of abroad in the novel. Okay. So abroad means that we're talking about whatever is negative, whatever is unfamiliar, whatever is foreign, and whatever is foreign and negative, as presented in the novel, is in another location away from London, which is, according to the Victorians, India. Again, some context may help. Of course, you know that India was the largest and most diverse and unwieldy of Victorian Britain's imperial possession. It was the biggest and the most important imperial holding. And it is there in the novel. Um, and especially the time during the Indian Mutiny. We spoke about mutinies, and we said mutiny is more of a like a uh, some kind of revolt, some kind of rebellion. And we said that the Indians were not happy about how the British were dealing with them, and at one point they would uh, uh, turn against the English, and they would kill them. And so this is obviously the background that we're having. Again, if anything, I mean, the writer is trying to prove that whatever is English is good and whatever is not English is bad and bloody and savage. So it is true that we are in London, which is obviously home, but we still have references to Indian places, events, place names, events, objects, and people. Uh, Sometimes you have even words that are written in Hindu or Urdu without explanatory notes, which indicate, among other things, that some people were familiar with those languages. Again, if we talk about Hindu or Urdu, these are foreign elements. And also, even the houses in London are, I mean, furnished with items that come from abroad. So you have hookahs, you have tiger skins, you have Indian fabrics. So again, it's as if the writer is trying to say that it is true that you're home, but you are invaded by products from the colonies from abroad. Again, the references to India is all over the place. Again, even the money that those people brought back with them was taken from India. Um, again, that's also a reference to the influence of abroad on home. Another influence of India would be that you get to know that Mary Marston herself, the English lady, was born in India. And the fact that Captain Marston, her father, spent many years as an officer in the British Army in India. Um, again, that would tell you, or that would prompt you to check where Holmes stands. And Holmes, and behind him, of course, would be the writer. Where do they stand when it comes to the empire and the British Empire, especially in India? And you will get to know that Holmes himself, he doesn't speak very explicitly about India, about Indian life, but you can sense this feeling that uh, um, India is important to him and to everybody else in terms of the riches that people bring with them, and also the influence of, um, I mean, the idea that crime and violence are associated with places like India. How much does Holmes know about India? He knew about India through uh, British magazines and everything. Also, Holmes can tell the difference between the ashes of Indian tobacco and that of the British. Again, you can feel the influence of India on everybody else. It tells you that the British used to kind of import things from India and other places. And it would also indicate the imperial power of Britain at the time. What else do we have? I mean, in terms of influence from abroad and especially from India, also the idea that you have Indian servants, butlers, even the queen herself had a servant. What's his name? I think his name was Karim. And he used to read for her and write and everything. So that would be an indication that the foreign elements and the abroad elements were very much at work in the novel. So all servants were apparently brought back from India, whether we're talking about Major Sholto or the other people. You would have Indian butler. Butlers are people who are now house managers who manage English houses. Um, again, the people started to associate crime with the presence of those Indian people with their different jobs. Um, so, does Holmes know about India as a presence? Did he go there, for example? Did he live there? No. Most of his knowledge is largely intellectual and theoretical from the newspapers and from the books that he read. Unlike Watson, for example, because Watson has more practical experience, the fact that he was an ex-colonial in India. He went to India at one point and he served there. So again, Watson would bring back to the idea of abroad and then being an officer there at one point, participating in British wars in India and everything. So as you can see, India is very prominent in the novel. The influence of India. We started off with um, the the visibility of India in British and Victorian households. I mean, we're talking about carpets and oriental tables. We're talking about hookahs, tobacco, for example. Remember when you said that homes can always distinguish between Indian tobacco and British one. So India is very much there in the novel, and together with the idea that um, the second most important character in the novel, Dr. Watson, was an officer and a veteran officer, a British veteran officer in India, and he was part of the Indian-Afghan War. Obviously, the Indians were on the side of the British as part of, of the British Empire. So India is very much there in the novel. Again, you would feel that there is more positive aspects to the presence than negative, but this is obviously not true because the British and the Victorians would associate violence uh, um, and crime to foreign elements, people who come from the colonies, and the biggest colony, of course, like we said, was India. So the butlers, the other Indian servants, whenever obviously the English failed do, to detect who the culprit or the criminal is, they normally refer to foreign elements, and especially to Indians. So as you can see from the surface, you would feel that this is a comfortable world that has domestic interiors, emotional balance and order, and also the prospect of blissful marriage. Remember that Dr. Watson is taking interest in uh, uh, the girl. Uh, Again, this is London. If you look at India and the reference to India, it is depicted and portrayed as being the complete opposite, according to them, or the British and the English imagination at the time. India is a land of extremes. It has wealth and it also has poverty. It has a measure of danger and lawlessness to it, and it's also a land of financial opportunity and adventure. So it's a very mixed, and you would have this mixed feelings towards India. You would have even this idea of ambivalence. British people at the time, they wouldn't know whether to feel um, good about it or not. I mean, they know that it is a land of opportunity, but opportunity comes at sometimes a cost. Again, what they do not fail to present and feel would be that whatever happens in London, whatever may destabilize London life, has to be foreign. The English are cute. The English are angels, and if there are crimes, it's not because they were committed. They are not committed by English people. They are committed by foreign elements, and on top of them are Indians who go there as perhaps servants, go there on scholarships to study. Again, as you can see, uh, um, home with its explicit associations of stability and security and prosperity is invaded by whatever is um, approved and its different elements. The danger that approved poses, the lawlessness that they normally associate with the colonies. Remember what reinforces those negative impressions about the colonies and India would be the idea that the novel was written against the backdrop of the Indian Mutiny. Of course, the English would call it mutiny, but the Indians and people who are like them, who are colonized and victimized, are going to call it a revolt or a revolution. And obviously, there is a big difference. Mutiny would mean that perhaps you're raising up arms against other people for no obvious reasons. But this is obviously was not the case. The Indians had to endure for so long. And when it was, I mean, and obviously at one point they came to say enough is enough. We've been dehumanized. I mean, our wealth have been taken away from them, from us. We work, we also are part of the empire, but we're paid very little. The levels of poverty are high. I mean, people. I mean, most of the people are, below the poverty line. So they, at one point, they would the Hindus and the Muslims and all the other sectors of the Indian society would unite together and they would raise up arms against the English. Again, if anything, Boyle obviously is trying to say, or Doyle, I'm sorry, is trying to say that the English are good, while whoever is not English is bad and violent and savage. Again, this is the backdrop of the novel. There is reference to the Indian Mutiny, which lasted for or until July 1858. It started the year, and it started in May 1857 and only ended in 1850. A long year of violence and counter-violence. But who started it all? If you ask me, it would be, of course, the English with their history of colonization and brutal treatment of other people and other nations. Again, we spoke enough about what happened and what triggered this kind of mutiny, if we can safely call it mutiny. We would call it a revolution or a revolt. We spoke about people who work in the British Army and they were Indian, whether Muslims or Hindu, and the fact that they were asked to kind of grease their rifles with fat and pork, and obviously these are no-nos when it comes to the Indians with all their different sectors. And okay, so there is a great deal of talk about the Indian Mutiny. and what happened there. So we're not doing history there. We're obviously not um, trying to prove who was right and who was wrong. We're simply referring to the fact that the novel in a large part was inspired by the mutiny. Does it mean that Doyle was there during the mutiny? No. Actually, he got his information and his knowledge years later. He lived decades and years after what happened. Um, Again, there is a great deal of talk about the mutiny, and again, it provides and furnishes a good background for proving that whatever is foreign and whatever is abroad is violent, is negative, is savage. So it serves the writer, English as he is, very well. These are incidents from the mutiny. And this is actually not in the book or in the novel, but again, reading about it can help you, can inform the discussion about the novel, especially in its foreign, excuse me, and its abroad element. And there is also talk about the response, the literary response or responses to the mutiny, how the mutiny was depicted in the works of art of the English. And the depiction was very biased, of course, typically, and it ignores facts on the ground, and it ignores the reasons why people would rise. Obviously, don't get angry or upset for no reasons. You have to have reasons for that, and the Indians had uh, reasons for revolting against the oppression of the East India Company. Um, again, most of the depiction and the portrayal was biased. Shifting the blame entirely on the Indians. And some of them were also asking for or advocating revenge, which the English did. And they were very brutal in their reprisals and in their revenge, I promise you. These are examples that we don't have them normally in exams when we talk about the poems that spoke about the mutiny, like Rossetti's poem, uh, in the Round Tower of Jahazia. And I would advise you to read it. And again, it's full of bias, full of prejudice against Indians and presenting Indians as if they are savage, incivilized or uncivilized, to say the least. And again, together with the poems, you have illustrations and paintings, again, presenting the Indians uh, in the same and along the same lines as being bad, negative, and savage, and everything in between. Again, we have details about how many people were killed and how, and it's very biased, if you ask. Okay, so we're not very much or too much interested in what other people said. We're interested in the novel itself, in Doyle's representation of what happened. Again, we need to know that he was not inspired by the events because he was part of it or he witnessed them. No, he came like 3 decades. We're talking about 30 years after the events. So where did he get his information from? He depended on those false narratives about what actually happened, whether those false narratives were given in journals, in histories, in books, in verse, and novels, and everything in between. There is, of course, reference to the mutiny, especially in Small's account. Small tells us all about what happened and the outbreak of the Indian Mutiny uh, um, in more than or on more than one occasion. Again, he would talk about the atrocities committed, and obviously he talks about he is not being fair like his the writer himself. Again, this is all about how the mutiny was represented and what happened and the massacre and how the British civilians were um, mutilated and brutalized according to the English, of course. We were not there and we cannot tell. And even the Indian were not given the opportunity to have a fair hearing for people to hear them and see why they did what they did, and whether there is an element of exaggeration to what happened. Okay, so what is interesting about the representations was that you can feel that these are mere talk, text. These are images that are painted and portrayed using the imagination of those who portrayed them. So the accounts and the representations were not witness based. We don't have people who went there and they come and tell us all about it. So if you have something that is being graphic or textual in a novel or in, so you would get emotionally affected. But is it the truth? No, it's not. Again, where does Doyle stand? Is he and is he a colonial or a colonialist? You can never tell. I mean, it's not very clear. He's not deeply involved in what happened. Um, but the again, he got inspired, but by the fact that Britain at the time was a great empire, and India was its foremost colonial holding. It's the place that brings them wealth and money and everything. India contributed to the welfare of um, the British society in the Victorian age and beyond. And obviously, its loss meant the loss of a big thing. I mean, a big source of income and so what we can see in Doyle's novel um, is that there is a relationship of a sort between Britain and India, but it is never presented as problematic. It is never presented as illegitimate in the sense that Britain is colonizing India, and obviously colonization is not very legitimate. So he never questions the legitimacy of British rule in India. So again, the novel has or took its inspiration from the Indian mutiny, and a great deal of what happens, and a great deal of the references of some of the characters are in one way or another referring back to the mutiny. So the sign of war, among other things, would show us the Victorians at home, at their most comfortable and reassured, living in ordered and secure domestic life, but they are obviously hit with the waves of whatever is abroad, whatever is foreign, and whatever is violent. Um, so the novel is as much about the Victorian abroad. Um, and it is written by somebody who had never been to India, and somebody who came like 3 or 2 decades after what happened. Again, people were ready to obviously accept what Doyle or and other people are saying about mutiny, because they have been raised up to uh, and they were told time and time again that it's all the fault of the Indians. And the fact that the Indians, whether those who stay in England, working in the service industry, working as, um, servants and everything, or those who live back in India, the Indians, all of them are dangerous, and they pose a threat to the empire, to the English people, and their way of life, and their feeling of security, and everything. Okay, so the conclusion would be that Doyle is a supporter of the empire. He never campaigns against it. He even has, um, you know, incidents in his life where it was very clear that he is a campaigner in favor of the British efforts and their empire. Um, but this is basically what the sign of war is all about. So, do you have any questions?
Yes, doctor, I have a
Thank you.
question.
Yes, yeah, okay, go ahead.
So here in the sign of war, we should focus only on the two main concepts, home and abroad, and the
Yes.
mutiny,
Yes, and
and not
also, and the short answers, for example, you would have to talk about what a detective novel is, its different features and aspects, for example. What else about the sign of war? Again, the impact, like we said, of the whatever is um, approved on home, and why um, did we have detective novels together with the explicit reason of um, serving as a nice diversion or pastime for people who don't have internet or YouTube. You also have this idea that the writer of detective novels is trying to reassure people, the Victorians, that yeah, it is true that there is crime, but it is under control.
okay. Thank you so much.
Work. Questions? Anyone and everyone?
Me, doctor.
Yeah, Jose, go ahead.
The name of the novel, the sign of for, it's refer for what? Name of persons or
That yeah, and the four are obviously the people who were part of the crime that was committed.
we should know the names or no, not necessary of
Yeah,
this.
we have Small and Dr. and Shelton and the other people. But of course, you're not going to be asked about the significance of the title
Thank you.
book. Any other questions? Okay, so let's agree on an extra class tomorrow. So what do I have tomorrow? I have a class to. Can we meet tomorrow at 4?
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Okay, so what is it that we're doing tomorrow? We're going to start and perhaps finish because it's a small thing. What's the name of the work? It's a small novel. Let me check.
Future.
What?
The beat of Felicia.
Yeah, yes, the Beach of Felicia, whatever the pronunciation is. Okay, so I'm going to stop on this note and with this item, unless you guys have any further questions. Yeah, it's a novella like somebody is telling us. Thank you. Okay, any more questions, everyone? Okay, right. So on this note and with this item, we come to the end of this lovely class. Thank you so much, and I'll see you tomorrow at 4, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Alaikum salam.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Doctor.
You're welcome.